Hello everyone and welcome back to JB's Total Gaming, where today we're going to be talking about some of the shotguns in Warframe. Now, a couple of things I want to point out real quick. We're not going to talk about every shotgun in the game, so things like the Strun, the Mark 1 Strun, the Strun, there are just better versions of it, like the Strun Wraith out there. Now, there are some weapons like the Convectrix. If you want to go to my channel, the video I did before this one is on the Convectrix and the new mod you can get from Nightwave for this, and it makes it much more usable and just a better weapon in my opinion. It's still not personally my favorite, but if you kind of like the Convectrix, go check it out. It's a lengthy video where we talk about all different kinds of builds you can do with the new mod and what I personally think might be the most effective. Now, also, I've been playing the game for a long time, and I have invested in a lot of weapons, but some of them I just haven't gotten around to yet, like the Warframe or the Phage, and also the Sobek I have leveled, but well, I didn't like it. Some people like this weapon, especially with a Riven. It can be a good weapon. So we're not going to talk about every shotgun in the game. There obviously is going to be some personal taste in this one, but we're going to talk about a lot of the shotguns. Now, this video is going to be focused, hopefully both helpful to new players who might be able to see how these work, some builds they might want to try with it, help them decide what weapons they might want to get and invest in if they have limited slots and, limited availability to potatoes they can put in and former they can put into, what will suit them as to what they want to invest in. And also, if you've been around for a while like me and you've leveled most of the weapons in the game, I've kind of gone back and put builds on and been investing in weapons that I leveled to 30 and never touched again. That was part of the inspiration of this video, is I want to talk about some of the weapons that both I enjoyed initially and then went back and ended up enjoying later. Weapons like the Corinth that I didn't really play with after I leveled it, and now you can see that I have a full build on it and things like that. Now, lastly, we're also not going to really talk about the Heck. The Heck is the starter shotgun. If you're MR4 or higher and don't have good shotgun, that you love, build the Heck. You can use the Heck anywhere on the star chart. It's an amazing weapon. It has a mod you can get from Steel Meridian with 200% multi-shot, which is amazing. And if you're not with Steel Meridian, you can trade for it. Hopefully you can find somebody willing to trade a mod from a faction that you are involved with. It's a great weapon. It can be used anywhere, but again, has a big brother in the Vacor Heck. So we're going to talk about some builds, some things it can do. Bear in mind, these builds are not mandatory. Build it however you want to build it. However, in general, there tends to be with shotguns either a build where you focus on critical damage, a build where you focus on status, or builds where you focus on balancing and trying to get the best of both worlds, what is referred to as a hybrid build. Now, there are other builds in the games like Viral Bleed builds and Hunter Munition build and things like that. Those are less common on shotguns, although that is a thing I want to point out now. But real briefly, though, for newer players, we are going to talk about status chance and on weapons that are pellet-based shotguns. So there are shotguns like the Astela that fire a single slug. There are beam weapons like the Convectrix, and then there are pellet-based shotguns that fire a bunch of pellets. And for players that know everything about status chance and all that, you can go ahead and skip a little bit, or we'll talk about it real briefly and maybe you can use a refresher. But you will hear people talk about 100% status builds on weapons. Now, if you're not really familiar how that works, when you have a pellet-based shotgun and you have status chance, if your status chance is not 100% before you add multi-shot, okay, then that status chance will be divided up amongst the pellets. So right now, if we're at 84% and we have 10 pellets, each one will have an 8.4% chance of proccing a status effect, basically. Now, multi-shot can trick you, because when I add multi-shot, that status chance is going up. Now, that's going up because it is a per shot percent chance. So even if I get to 100%, but that includes multi-shot on there, I'm not going to get to a true 100% unless I get to that 100% before I put a multi-shot on. So what do I mean by that? If I get to 100% on the status chance before I have anything that says multi-shot on it, then instead of, that status chance being divided amongst all my pellets, each pellet will proc a status, which is amazing, and it's what makes 100% status chance pellet shotguns great, because you have a bunch of pellets, and then they all proc a status. That's part of the reason why it's Tigris Prime, however you pronounce it, is considered by many people the most powerful weapon in the game, and don't worry, we will show it off. But you need to get to 100% status beforehand. So, if I want to go in in and add another of the 6060 mods, and these are usually the way that you get to 100% status on pellet-based shotguns are these mods, or maybe you have a Riven or something like that that has status chance. You can now see with 4 of these mods equipped, we're at 100% before any multi-shot is on the weapon. Now, if I add multi-shot, it's obviously still going to stay at 100%. But every one of my pellets is now going to proc a status. So in case you've heard people talk about 100% status builds on pellet-based shotguns, that's what they are talking about. So let's go into some shotguns. Now, we mentioned the Heck being a really cool weapon. Now, we're going to show off the Vapor Heck instead, because while the Heck is great, the Vapor Heck is just more powerful, even though the Heck has that 200% multi-shot mod. Now, we mentioned briefly that there tend to be crit weapons, status weapons, and weapons you can build for hybrid, where you can choose either one or try to build for both. Now, this is a crit weapon. We're going to show this off as an example. Now, the crit chance isn't amazing on it without mods. You can see here the unmodded 25% crit multiplier 2.0, which is kind of the standard. Anything below that is kind of below average. Anything above that is above average. And there's an okay status chance at 25%, but we're not going to get to 100% without like Rivens or other means. Now, the Heck is almost a little bit more status focused, a little bit less crit focused, but it still doesn't get to 100% naturally with regular mods. So, that's another reason why it's not necessarily great. And the Vapor Heck just packs more of a punch. So you can see here that we have a bunch of Prime mods on here, like Prime Ravage. Now, if you're a newer player, if you don't have Prime Ravage, at some point I do suggest trying to get it when Borrow comes around and has this, because it's way better than the base mod. Now, the builds I'm going to show off, some of them might have Riven, some of them are going to have Prime mods. Obviously, if you don't have the Prime mods, use whatever you have, and use whatever you want. We're going to talk briefly about some other ways that you can build things as well. But for showing off here, these are the mods I'm going to have. Now, in general, any critical weapon, you also, again, if you don't have Prime Point Blank, use Point Blank, I put Prime Charge Shell on a lot of weapons because it's a lot of damage, and we're going to be showing off mostly corrosive things because, in general, the hardest enemies to kill in the game are the Grineer, and in general, they have armor that gets taken down by corrosive, and one of their armor types takes more damage from corrosive, so that tends to be what you build against them. So we're going to try to kill some hard-to-kill enemies. Now, one mod you want to keep in mind, though, anytime you're building a critical shotgun, is Laser Sight. Laser Sight is an Acolyte mod, so when there's an Acolyte event going on, you can try to hunt them and potentially get this mod. You can also buy it for plat. Now, the thing with Laser Sight, anytime you're using a weapon that you want higher critical chance on, Laser Sight can be a great mod. I don't tend to use it. Here's the thing. You need to get headshots, and then you need to be aiming down sights. I don't aim down sights as much as some other players. If that's something you do naturally, if you're someone who naturally goes for headshots, Laser Sight is a really cool mod. Highly recommended. If you have it, if you can get it, if that's the way you like to play, go for it. And honestly, statistically, it's probably better on a lot of critical builds than the builds I have. I don't necessarily like to play that way. I tend to use value usability, and as I'm someone that, while I obviously do try to get headshots occasionally, it's not something that I'm super focused on or amazing at. I don't always like, having to aim down sights, so I don't personally use it, but I just want to point that out. On any critical build, this is probably statistically a mod that you want to use. But for this build, I just kind of went for as much damage as possible in multi-shots. Again, this is not necessarily a mod you have to have on Blaze. You can see that we add heat to here on the corrosive just because Blaze is a powerful mod that adds a lot of damage. So this is a build where we're just going for, some critical chance, critical damage, and as much damage as possible. The other reason the Vapor Heck is nice over the Heck, and over here we have level 100 Corrupted Heavy Gunners. This is what type of thing you'd face at like sortie level 3, and these are very tanky enemies. So part of the reason that, and you can see here, with headshots, we just two-shot an enemy. So you can see, while the Heck is great, the Vapor Heck is just simply more powerful. And these are very tanky enemies. And with this build that, again, isn't maximizing, isn't using laser sight or anything like that, you can see this thing does a lot of damage. And it has 8 shots instead of 4, which is a big advantage and not a terrible reload time either over the Heck that only has 4. So let's talk about some other shotguns. So let's go back into equip. Let's go to shotgun, and what should we talk about next? So how about the Archiplasmor? So this one's a little bit different, and On this one, it's tricky. This one fires one like wide wave of attack, and so getting status chance and whatever is you don't fire a whole lot. So that's we do have a lot of status on this, which is nice, but it's not something you want to get to 100% with necessarily because it's not a pellet based weapon. It doesn't have a great rate of fire, and a critical chance isn't great on this one. I do have a riven on this one that I managed to get, and I've rolled it a bunch of times, and this is the best I've gotten. Now I would love having like critical chance or something on this, and I'll probably continue to try to roll this one, but a lot of multi-shot is nice. Shooting more of these and getting more of that is kind of cool. But again, this is one that the critical chance isn't great on, but it's enough that I feel like going for critical chance on this one is pretty neat. Now, this is a weapon that I like to show off and I like to use because of the way it works. Now, they did get rid of headshot multipliers on this, and you can see that this one, we're taking a few more shots. However, that status is coming into effect and taking off the armor, and you can see even though we were firing more shots per enemy, it was going through enemies and hitting multiple enemies. So while they did get rid of the headshot multiplier on this because it was so massive and so easy to get headshots with this weapon, and it can get caught up, like if you shoot this at something, it's not going to go through walls and things like that, but it will sometimes go through like thinner railings and things like that. This is just a cool weapon. It shoots this massive wave. It's super easy to hit stuff, and it'll go through and hit multiple enemies naturally. So this is a lot of people's favorite shotgun in the game, and I totally understand why. And if you can get a Riven with critical chance, that's great. However, as you can see, the Riven disposition, because it's used so much, is only one. So there's the Archiplasmor, a cool and unique weapon in my opinion. We don't want to go to upgrade, we want to go to equip. All right, so what other ones do we want to talk about? So the Astela. The Astela, in my opinion, is a weapon that a lot of people don't necessarily use. 3 out of 5 disposition isn't great, and you can see we're at 99% status. However, this is a slug-based shotgun, so it's going to fire a slug at a time. Obviously, with multi-shot, you can fire more than one slug, but getting into 100% isn't something that you really necessarily want to focus on. And again, the critical chance is high enough that maybe if you had a rivet, you could try to do things with this, but 17% is getting around where it's kind of like, eh. So with this, I just went for as high damage as possible, and you can see we have multi-shot and cold on this one. Now, I am someone who really likes having utility mods on things. So you can see I have chilling reload on this as well, which is going to give me some damage and a lot more reload. And again, corrosive damage. We do end up with a decent amount of cold, but corrosive is, still our highest by far. Well, technically. And now one thing you do want to bear in mind when you're talking about status chance happening, the slash, impact, and puncture types of damage are 4 times more likely to proc. So basically, instead of this being almost 1,000, it would be closer to being almost like 4,000 in a sense, which is still, well below our corrosive. So again, I do have a Riven on this one. I might roll this some more. Multi-shot and cold isn't the worst thing. I particularly do like having multi-shot on this. And again, I have prime mods. But I wanted to show this off because while it is a weapon, and we're going to talk a lot about weapons that, all these are endgame viable, and the heck is endgame viable as well. It's just the Vacor heck is better. This weapon not only fires automatically, but it has an AoE effect. It's a small AoE effect, but it can, potentially hit multiple enemies. And as you can see, I believe this one's MR7. With its rapid fire and with some good mods, I wanted to show this off because I personally really enjoy using this. The idea, it's like these glass slugs that when they impact kind of shatter and deal damage to enemies around them. So if you're looking for something around that MR or just another weapon to try if you're a player that's later on and just is looking for something interesting, I actually really enjoy using this weapon. Obviously having a Riven helps, but with just multi-shot and cold, it's not like this Riven is making this weapon. Even without a Riven, it's not the most powerful shotgun in the game, but it's a shotgun that I really enjoy using personally. All right. Now, talking about shotguns that Rivens really help, why don't we jump to the comb? Now, the comb is something that, again, the critical chance isn't great on it. However, this is one that I have status chance and slash on this, which I really like. And this definitely can do some slash damage to enemies. And with this much status chance on the weapon, I don't remember if you need like 152% maybe status chance on a Riven. I can't remember the exact number, but it allows you to only use 3 of the 60/60 status mods to get to 100% before multi-shot. Now, why is that important? Well, if you want to do, say, a corrosive build, so you can see our first 2 mods here are the things that use corrosive, and you have to use 4 of the 60/60 mods, you're going to end up with corrosive and blast because you're going to have heat and cold also. The problem with that is blast can be kind of annoying. It doesn't deal a lot of damage to highly armored enemies, and then on top of that, knocks enemies down. That can be useful if you are looking for the crowd control, if you're going against enemies that are going to likely kill you. It can also be annoying when you just want to kill the enemies. So having to only use 3 of the 60/60 mods on this is personally something that I really like with this Riven. Again, but you can get to 100% without having to do that, but you're going to have to use 4 of the 60/60 mods. Now, shotgun spaz. I like utility mods. This is an interesting and unique weapon in the sense that it ramps up over time. It fires faster. I believe it even fires more pellets the longer you attack with, and it has, a lot of shots it can do before you have to reload. So this is something that I personally would want to use on this weapon. Now, not everyone is necessarily going to want to use this. Some people want as much damage as possible, and having a mod like that doesn't really add any damage. Now, technically, you are going to kill enemies quicker, but I personally really like having this because you see, then we ramp up rather quickly. And as we ramp up rather quickly, we start off kind of slow, but we can very quickly take out these enemies. We're getting slash procs, we're doing a lot of damage, and there's that, pellet-based shotgun getting everyone having an effect, losing armor because of the corrosive, getting bleed procs and things like that. And again, this is, it's a decent weapon without a Riven, but this is something, you can see the 5 out of 5 disposition, that's the reason why Rivens on this weapon tend to sell for decent prices, because it can really make the weapon pretty amazing. It's fine without it. You can do some cool stuff without it, but it definitely helps out a whole lot. All right, so we already talked about Convectrix. Why don't we jump to the Corinth and kind of go in order here? So the Corinth, again, it's a weapon that has its own kind of unique thing to it, where it has its regular, fire pellet-based shotgun, as you might expect, and this is one that when you reloads 1 shell at a time, and we'll look at the build here in a second. However, it has a secondary fire. The secondary fire, you don't want to hit things with it. If you hit something with it, it doesn't go off. If you don't hit things with it, after it travels a certain distance, it explodes. Now, if we look here, it doesn't deal a whole bunch of damage. Now, on lower levels, even like level 30, things like that, if you're not dealing with superly heavily armored stuff, it'll kill enemies. It's fun. You can get AoE kills, when you're not dealing with high-level armored enemies. But even against high-level enemies, it has a knockdown effect that can be very useful. But again, it's not going to deal a lot of damage against these types of enemies. However, as you can see, now I think we probably got some corrosive procs and it lowered these guys' armor before that, but just shooting them, this is a powerful weapon. Now again, I have a Riven on this as well, which helps out quite a bit. But the Corinth is a pretty cool weapon if you like pellet-based shotguns, if you don't mind. Some people really don't like that reload, where it reloads 1 at a time, but it can be useful to get that 1 extra shell in that maybe you need. I guess it's not, I'm not great at actual terminology for weapons, but you can see this one here. I have critical damage, status duration, which isn't great in Toxin. So it lets me not put a Toxin mod if I don't want to, I guess. Again, this is not ideal. I'd probably want critical chance and critical damage if I could on this. but it's what I have right now. It's actually unrolled, so I could roll it more, but I think this one is pretty fine. Again, this one is definitely more of a crit based build. Laser sight would be a cool thing to put on this, but this is a weapon that I personally really like chilling reload on. So you can see we have corrosive and cold because of that, but I really like being able to reload quicker. When you have to reload the whole thing, and this is one, like, every time you're out of combat, you're going to want to reload because it's that individual shell reload. This just makes it a lot quicker. Again, if you want full damage, you don't have to go with this. You can go with maybe laser sight instead of this, things like that. But this is a fun weapon in my opinion, in part because the alternate fire can take out groups of enemies on lower levels, not highly armored enemies, and it can be useful in crowd controlling enemies later in the game, and is just a pretty powerful weapon in and of itself. So let's keep going down the line and talking about some more shotguns. So we talked about the Corinth. Now, the Exorgis, I've put some investment in this one. I like this weapon. I do not have a Riven for it. And with this one, again, I went for some reload on this, and you can see here we have all kinds of stuff. We have corrosive, we have radiation, we have blast, we have all kinds of stuff going on with this, and you can see we have 100% status build. Now this one, if I remember correctly, is a pellet-based shotgun, but it only fires 3 pellets, I believe. So adding multi-shots, may help it, but it's just not going to proc as many status effects as some other things. Now, you can see here, though, we have some ridiculous numbers. Now, I do have Blast on this build. Again, this is a weapon that, if I remember correctly, I do need all 4 of the 60/60s in order to, or maybe I don't. Maybe I just have that because of Blaze. Well, I don't mind the knockdown necessarily. But as you can see, this packs a huge punch. However, the magazine on this is 1. This has 1 magazine on it. So this is a weapon that I was kind of hoping would maybe take the place of the Tigris Prime. And it's powerful. I mean, you can do a ton of damage with this weapon. So you can see, bam, there's the blast procs going off. And, well, almost 2 shots. Oh, and with the bleed effects that happen, because you do get bleeds on this. And then there's kind of an example of what the blast damage does. You can see the bleed procs going, because this is a 100% status weapon, and there is bleed on it. So this enemy should die from the bleeds. Hopefully, nope, never mind, I didn't stay on. So we're almost 2-shotting these enemies. You can see there's only 1 shot, but with some reload on it, we can fire relatively quickly. This is a weapon that packs a huge punch, and almost like the Vectus. Because it has a quick reload, the fact that it only has 1 in the chamber is not necessarily bad. And I enjoy this weapon. I like using it. I like the big punch on it. But I do have to at the end of the day, say the Tigris Prime just is more effective. And why don't we go ahead and, so this is the build I currently have on it. But let's go ahead and jump to the Tigris Prime. Now, the Tigris Prime is a little bit funky, in that it has 2 shots in there, and it has a unique firing mechanism where the first time, if you're playing on PC, if you pull the trigger and then you hold it down, so I'll just hold it down, I fire 1 shot, and then when I lift my finger back up, it'll fire the 2nd shot. I can technically fire in quick succession like that. Now, the reason why this weapon is considered one of the most powerful weapons in the game is because you can see it's a 100% status shotgun that has a lot of pellets. And you can see that those bleed procs, look at that go. Now, there are several different ways you can build that. So, bleed, again, super high level armored enemies is really nice because bleed basically ignores armor. So there we just go for chest shots. We're not going to do it, and this enemy might not bleed out. And we do have a viral bleed build on this one. And now, again, there are multiple ways that you can build this weapon when using the 60/60 mods. But you can see basically what you could consider one fire, just because you click and let go. And I'm assuming it works the same way if you're using like a controller. You can hold in the fire button, like the trigger button or whatever. But there are different builds you can do with this weapon. You can see, again, this has a 1 Riven disposition. I just happen to have a Riven for it. I like this because it has slash and reload speed, making slash more likely to proc. And remember, slash is 4 times more likely to, impact, puncture, and slash and other things. And we're at 19,000 already on this build. But there are other ways that you can build this. Right now, I have it where my 60/60 mods here are built for viral and radiation. Now, viral lowers the enemy's health by their maximum health by half so that the bleeds can kill them more quickly. But as you saw in that one example, when the viral goes off, then the enemy gets that health back. So if the enemy doesn't bleed out before the viral goes off, that's not necessarily great. You can also build this for corrosive and blast. You can build this for gas and magnetic, which obviously is going to be very effective against the corpus. Whereas the Grineer, have more armor, but, hitting their shields and then getting the gas to take down the health on a Grineer can be pretty effective. So there are a lot of different ways you can build this. I personally build it for viral radiation because I didn't want the blast effect on there. But there are a lot of ways you can go, and one of the reasons this weapon is considered the most powerful weapon in the game by a lot of players is because you have that 100% status. The slash is so high on it that you're going to get a lot of slashes. The damage is so high on it that those slashes are going to be for high value. So however you want to build it, you're able to bleed out those very hard to kill enemies even at really high levels. I personally don't really use Digger's Prime that much though, in large part just because I don't really like that firing mechanism. I do have some reload on there. Actually, let's go back to it real quick. I'm trying to remember, do I have, yes, a sweeping serration to make the blast higher on it. And then let's see here, reload. Yeah. A lot of people also use Seeking Fury on this, and I honestly, I could, because seeing as the Rivens aren't great, Seeking Fury, I do suggest. I don't have it on there right now. Having the reload speed and to punch through is great. That's another weapon that most people probably have on there. To be honest, I don't even know why I don't have it on there. Maybe it was because I wanted to try out the Riven when I got it or something like that. But this is also highly recommended. The punch through allowing you to take out multiple enemies, and then the reload speed on it is also very nice. Did want to point that out. And like I said, probably most people are going to want that on their build. And that's why it's considered one of the most powerful shotguns in the game. So, what do we need to talk about next? We talked about the comb. Let's talk about the Phantasma. Why not? The Phantasma, much like the Astala, is a weapon that I feel like a lot of people sleep on and don't realize how good this weapon is. Particularly, I did a video on the Phantasma a while back when Prime Charge Shell came out, and I said, look, this weapon really is endgame viable. This is the build I have on it right now. You can see the critical chance is so low on it. You can go for try to get 100% status on this if you want to. That's fine. Now, I didn't personally. You can see this one I have multi-shot and damage on there. And again, because it's beam-based, the multi-shot adds damage afterwards, which definitely helps. You don't need a Riven for this to be good. You can see it's a 3 out of 5 disposition. I feel like this is a weapon a lot of people kind of sleep on. And again, you can build different ways. You can go for 100%. This one I just tried to go for kind of as much damage as possible. And this one also has kind of a unique secondary fire. So it is a beam weapon, and as you can see, this can take out high-level enemies relatively quickly. And one nice thing about it, it has a very quick reload on it. And as you can see, just taking down enemies. So it has that, 11 shots kind of, but it fires in a stream and you can see it tick down. But, very quick reload. And it has a secondary fire that you can tap, where it'll use 2 of your ammo and shoot out these things that will not only do some damage, but then send out these little things that'll seek enemies, much like kind of Pack Seeker or something like that. Or you can hold it down. So let's go ahead and go all the way to 11 here. Hold it down and fire, and you can see you can kind of lob these things, and it'll fire a more powerful effect. And you can see it actually deals pretty decent damage, and the secondary fire can be pretty fun. It can blow enemies up, and so you have the initial damage of it landing if you hit with it, and then also the kind of things that seek out enemies. So another reason multi-shot can be good on that is you get more of those initial things that you shoot out. And it was funny, I was playing in one mission, somebody was like, how are you shooting them so far? Well, because you can arc them, you can end up shooting them pretty far just by aiming up, and it's pretty fun. Now, part of the reason I don't really like the secondary fire on this and use it very often, we have invulnerability on, but they do self damage, and it'll blow up, if you have a decent build on it, it'll blow up most frames in one shot. But the Phantasma, much like the Astral as a weapon, I feel like a lot of people don't use all that much, but between the, and if you, like my son uses secondary fire all the time. He loves it. You can see we're getting, I believe, between 3 and 4 shots with this build. You can go more multi-shot and just try to, try to get 4 all the time if you can. I personally hardly ever use a secondary fire, though. I think the weapon is, good enough without it, and I don't like blowing myself up. But again, a lot of different ways you can go with it. This is definitely not a crit build, but even without crit, it's a weapon that can deal a lot of damage. So, let's see here. Let's go, lastly, I believe, to, what did we not talk about? The Strun Wraith. The Strun Wraith is also a lot of people's favorite weapon, and this is a weapon that, again, you can go, it's definitely something you want 100% status on, but you can also go, a hybrid build, and with this one, we've kind of gone a hybrid build. Again, laser sight would be really good on this build if you wanted to use it. This one also reloads individually, so I personally have chilling reload on this, but it's another 100% status weapon, pellet-based shotgun. Because of the way it reloads one at a time, I like having that where it just makes the reload quicker when you have reload speed on it. And again, you can just go 100% status. You don't have to go a hybrid build with crit, but I personally really like it. And as you can see, okay, so we're 3-shotting enemies here, but we can fire relatively quickly, and you can see, even though we have to reload individually, we have 10 shots, which is pretty nice. And, again, we're getting bleed procs and things on it. So this is another weapon that if you enjoy, more traditional shotguns, you don't mind that individual reload. This is a weapon that you can definitely have a lot of fun with, can do a lot of damage, get a lot of status going, and, I believe it's Tactical Potato's favorite shotgun, and this is another one of these weapons that I went back and ended up enjoying quite a bit. Alright, so there you have it. If you want to see more into Convectrix, go ahead and check out the channel, the previous video to this where we talked about it quite a bit. Again, there are other weapons. The Phage is an interesting kind of, you can see it fires 7 beams. It's an interesting weapon. I don't have a full build on it yet, though. The Boar Prime is also a fine weapon. The Sobek is a good weapon. Now, the Sancti Tigris is a good weapon. It's quite powerful, just not as powerful as the Tigris Prime, so that's why we didn't really talk about it. But hopefully that'll give you an idea as to what weapons might interest you. I think I'm not the only person that doesn't like using the Tigris Prime. I actually even prefer using the Exegist just with that single shot as opposed to that weird kind of dual fire mechanism. But I think it might be worth checking out if you're a player that's been around for a while, some weapons that maybe you haven't really played with. Maybe you haven't checked out the Astral or something like that. If you're a newer player, hopefully this will give you an idea of what weapons might be enjoyable for you. Like I said, Arcoplasmor is a lot of people's favorites. It's real easy to hit enemies, and even without that headshot multiplier, it can do quite a bit of damage and just fun to use, hit a lot of enemies. It's good AoE, so obviously it's going to be effective, against areas we're going to have a lot of enemies, things like that. But in general, these are weapons. I tend to be in just about any game someone who enjoys using shotguns, but one thing I like about Warframe is there are a lot of unique things out there. Arcoplasmor is unique compared to the other shotguns. I mean, technically so is the Convectrix, even though I don't really like it. You have interesting fire mechanisms like on the Tigris. You've got straight up traditional shotguns like the Vacor Heck, ones that ramp up like the Comb, cool secondary fires like on the Corinth. You have a lot of variety to kind of suit your style of play. So hopefully this will help you figure out, what sort of things you want to try out, what sort of types of builds you might want to try on things, and hopefully it was useful. Be sure, if you're interested in seeing more, to subscribe to the channel, help encourage me to do more videos. I'm planning on doing a video that hopefully I'll be able to do on Sunday if I'm able to get the new mod for the Harpack when that comes out from the Nightwave, and we can check out what that can do, getting 300% more critical chance, and talk about some potential builds and some things like that. And eventually, if we keep going, maybe even try to become a Warframe partner. But in in order to be able to do that, I need more subscribers. I need people to subscribe and share the videos. So I really appreciate you guys doing that. If there's something in particular you want to see, if you want to see my favorite secondary weapons, my assault rifles, melee builds, things like that, or whatever, let me know in the comments if there's something that you really want to check out. I'm always interested in feedback and what people want to see, and hopefully we'll be doing more and more of these in the future and continuing to grow the channel. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and we will talk to you again soon.